brought to you by the Rugby Outlet Mall, equipping you for freedom and connection through rugby. Find out more at rugbyoutletmall.com.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. My name is GiftTime Ibelu, and this is the podcast where we speak with people about the opportunities that they've experienced, found, created, or just been a part of via rugby. We have an amazing guest today. This is probably one of my favorites. They've all been favorite episodes. What can I say? I think I say this literally every week, but this is one of my favorite episodes this week. We have Adam Gray-Hayward. He is the lead actor from the movie Play On. Now, if you guys don't remember Play On, this was 2010 independent movie by David Story, about this guy from Scotland who is a star in Scotland, leaves Scotland to be able to come to America to play for the Kansas City Chiefs, and ends up finding out about himself and learning about this quirky group of Kansas City rugby players. A really great story. I think you can find it on Amazon Prime or Apple Music or iTunes. But I really enjoyed having this conversation. Definitely one of the first actors from the rugby cinematic lexicon, and it was great talking to him. Really down-to-earth guy, cool as I don't know what, and it was a really great conversation, just being able to look back and kind of understand what was going on during that time and getting to that point in the movie. So I know you guys are going to enjoy this one. Let you guys know we still got the sponsor, Rugby Outlet Mall, equipping you for connection and mobility. So we want to make sure that you guys are able to go in, and I got to give a little bit of praise for some of the people who got a couple of our HBCU Rugby Classic shirts. It was really a pleasure being able to get those out, and they are available, and you can actually get them on discount using promo code GROWRUGBY, GREAUX Rugby, and you can get 20% off all clothing, all exclusive clothing for GiftTime Rugby and HBCU Rugby Classic. And we're looking to be able to start adding more and more stuff. And this is really not even just the clothing, all exclusive items that are on the Rugby Outlet Mall websites, particularly with GiftTime Rugby and HBCU Rugby Classic. So it's one of those things that we're using. We want to be able to help change the game, and of course be able to make sure that you have not just your on-field leisures taken care of, but you get your casual, because rugby is a culture. So we're taking care of it off the field as much as we're trying to do on the field. Actually, probably more so than we're doing on the field. And then, of course, gots to get you guys to go check out Singapore to Tokyo any way we can. The documentary, as we two guys traverse through Southeast Asia on their way to the 2019 Rugby World Cup and the adventures that they have going through. You want to check this out. I'm telling you, it is worth the watch. $17, but it's 7 episodes, 20 minutes an episode. You'll get your money's worth out of it. You'll get to learn something, and I'm telling you, it'll make you remember why you want to go travel as soon as this COVID situation is all over, because you're going to want to be able to see and enjoy the things that are going on around the world, as much as it is, how we have to deal with here in the States. So you guys check it out. You can find it at redearthfilms.vhx.tv. That is Red Earth, REDEARTH Films, FILMS .vhx.tv. I'm not going to hold you guys up too much longer. It was just another great week. We're going through some more stuff. Just COVID life. It looks like it's very likely we may not have college rugby happening in the fall. So this is going to be interesting, because a lot of universities are not allowing the sports, and they're starting to shut down campuses. So this is going to be a very interesting new year. But in the meantime, still enjoy. And to even top it all off, I don't know whenever this will be listened to, but on Wednesday, July 22nd, Roots Rugby is going to be holding a virtual panel This is July 22nd, 2020. They're going to be holding a virtual panel. I'll be hosting it, and we got some great guests, and they want to be able to let you know about the resource that is Roots Rugby. And if you don't know about Roots Rugby, you can go check episode 1 with Kyle and Tiana Granby. Episode 1 with Kyle and Tiana Granby. And lastly, while I'm at it, please leave a review or rating. If you like it, if you hate this episode, if you like it on Apple iTunes or Google Play, leave a rating. We're trying to get to 10 by the end of the month. We are 3 up and just need 7 more to go. And I really want to be able to get you guys help. I don't care if it's 1 stars, if it's 5 stars, as long as you put a rating in there, that's all I appreciate. So without further ado, I'm not going to hold us off any longer. Adam Gray-Hayward from the movie Play On. Check it out.
Grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby, grow rugby.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another great episode of Grow Rugby. I got another V.I. and truly P person for us today. From the film Play On. Now, I know you guys might not have fully remembered it, but it was one of those early rugby films, 2010, that we got to enjoy. It was the first one I got to watch once after I started playing. We got the great, the legends, Adam Gray-Hayward. Adam, thank you for coming on today, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
So, like I said, that movie was actually the first rugby movie that I had watched after I started playing. So I started playing in 2009. And I remember whenever this movie kind of popped up and it was marketed, and it was just what's this independent movie? I was like, all right, let me go ahead and check this thing out. And interestingly enough, I enjoyed it. I was like, it's a true independent movie. But I was like, I get this. I'm all right. Nice.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was incredibly fun to make. It was an incredible experience. It all kind of came about very serendipitously. I was bartending at the time, and a friend told me about it. I went and just met the producer at a hotel lobby. I met the director at a Starbucks. And then I had to go back to Australia, so we just kept kind of conversing over email and with a time difference over phone, and ended up landing the role somehow. And the rest is history, right? And it was honestly still to this day, one of the most incredible experiences of my life, shooting that and with those incredible people, traveling to these incredible places in Kansas City and Scotland. So something I'll treasure forever.
Dude, I love that. So before we kind of go in further, because I do definitely have questions, sure. I kind of want to get it from the start. For you already mentioned coming out from Australia, but the question I always like to ask is, how do you personally get started in that connection to rugby, and subsequently, how did it all start working out? How did this all start for you?
Yeah, sure. Growing up in Australia, obviously rugby is like baseball or basketball for Americans. It's second nature. And so when I moved here, I was 14, and at the time, rugby wasn't what it was now, or what it is now. So I got into American football because it was the closest or next best thing.
Right.
And loved it. I feel like I did quite well with it. So I got the opportunity to continue on from high school and play in college down in San Diego. And during my time there, I became good friends with the guys on the club rugby team. And I always thought it just looks like so much fun. I always thought I'd love to get out there and play with you guys, but due to certain restrictions, I wasn't allowed to. And then after my last year of football, which would have been 2004, I just decided to postpone one of my classes for graduation so I could stay that extra spring semester and play one semester of rugby. And I kid you not, it was incredible. It was one of the best semesters of my entire college career. So much fun. You kind of just set up and practice or play at a field. It doesn't have all that pomp and circumstance of a big college game day feel, but it's fun. And we
very
kind of
personal.
Exactly. Exactly. Like you can't just pile into the back of people's pickup trucks. Maybe it wasn't that safe at the time, but you do whatever you could.
That's the best way, though. That's how it really truly goes. With a certain level of life danger and traveling, that's how you get to know your teammates the best. Real talk.
Yeah, no, it was exactly that. And ironically, I mean, the two of them that I've stayed most in touch with, I'll give them a shout out, Jeff and Danny. I've stayed in contact with them right through to present day. I mean, they're two of my closest friends, and they're guys I played rugby with. So yeah, it was incredible. And then I think, sort of coming up to LA afterwards, and I was kind of just doing various things. And then, it was bartending, and a coworker told me about a rugby movie he was auditioning for. And they went out and had to do drills and so forth as part of the audition. And I don't know, I didn't go at first. And then he got in touch with me again about a month later and said they were still looking for, the lead role, the Kilgore role. And I said, okay, that sounds interesting. And so he put me in contact with the writer and producer, Al Deacon. And he was flying out the next day, flying from LA back to Boston, I believe.
So wait, sorry to interrupt. So kind of leading into that moment, though. So for one, what college did you end up going to?
I went to San Diego State.
San Diego State. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great.
So, whenever you were doing it then, whenever you started with the rugby club then, was it just rugby that you were doing, or were you acting too at that point?
Not at the time. I mean, I was doing some theater classes at school, more just kind of to fulfill the credit requirement.
Right.
But I mean, no, my focus was purely just on, especially that last semester, just playing rugby and having fun. I did the absolute bare minimum credit-wise because I'd pretty much done everything I needed to graduate. So I thought, all right, well, you have to have a minimum to be in school. So I think it was one economics class, theater. There was another class called Challenges of Leisure. So I think that kind of says it all in terms of, how difficult my academics.
Right there.
It was difficult. I think ironically I got a B, but I don't want to kind of dig that up. I had trouble with leisure. But yeah, it was just basically all rugby.
Yeah.
When I wasn't doing that, I was I think I was working part-time just on the side. But yeah, it was a pretty laid back semester. It was great way to kind of finish the college career.
Makes
but
sense.
I wasn't really doing much acting at the time. It wasn't until I graduated and thought, my plan was to move to Los Angeles and pursue, which I did.
So where did the acting bug come for you? Even though doing the little bit of theater that you'd had, what was it that was let me give this a try versus, maybe other
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that would come directly from my dad. So my dad's an actor, has been my entire life. So kind of always being around it would be where the interest first started. Not really, from a standpoint of wanting to do it myself, but it was just very familiar. I mean, I would see him rehearsing scenes. I would go with him to auditions and various casting houses or studio lots. When he was doing a job, I'd go on set, but I always tell people I wouldn't be there watching everything. I'd usually be over in the corner, playing with the ball. I was just all about sports. But as I got older, especially towards the end of my college career, that's when I kind of got the interest in acting. And I didn't really want to, at the time, pursue a career in business or finance. I just wanted to do something different. And so I decided, I'll move to Los Angeles and I'll try my hand. And that's how it all kind of came about. And then, of course, I took classes and enrolled in different performance programs.
But again, most of those were mostly for the credit and not necessarily I was just trying to go and maybe aim in that direction.
In college, yeah. But once I decided to move to Los Angeles, I definitely took it seriously. I mean, I definitely started enrolling in programs, specifically based on being a successful working actor. So was that back in 2005, 2006?
Right. I always find it interesting, especially whenever it comes with people who have moved places, because a lot of people are very fearful when it comes to making these jumps, especially to a place like LA, where you have so much, there's just so many stimuli that go along there, right? For you, did you feel like there's always been this natural inclination for mobility? Because you're talking about moving from Australia over to Cali, then San Diego State, then up to LA. These are obviously the Australia one, not so much in your control, but
Yeah.
everything from there, do you feel like that you've always been a person that's kind of maneuvering, trying to always kind of find a different place mobility-wise, or?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've actually moved several times since. Also, I mean, I've gone in 2009. I moved back to Australia, then ended up moving to Montreal for a year, then moved back to Australia again for several years, and I moved back to Los Angeles in 2015.
Nice.
So yeah, I do kind of have this nomadic sort of lifestyle, this way, if you will. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not. I think, at some point you kind of have to, lay down some roots and get serious about things. But I mean, I've enjoyed it. It comes with its own challenges because I think you're always kind of hitting the reset button. But there's also that sense of adventure that comes with it and pulling up your bootstraps and just finding a way to make it work. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yes, it's happened a lot, and I think I'm just used to it now. I kind of get that itch after several years of like, okay, what's next? Where am I going to move on to?
No, I completely understand the feeling. Like I've always had that same experience too. Like as a kid, I think we moved 3 times at least minimum as a kid, and then I've moved another 2 or 3 times after that between states. And then, of course, once you start traveling, it ends up into a whole different realm of adventures. But I think the reason why I ask as well is I think there's always a relation to one's attraction to rugby as well, because I feel like rugby has always been something that's allowed a certain level of mobility in it, just because of the nature of the sport. It's transient, whether it's from a cultural standpoint, country to country, or whether it's from just club to club. But there's still that element where it's like, all right, we're siphoning through these unusual crowds, and I have to be able to reshape myself to be able to asphyxiate fit into what that crowd is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the one great thing about rugby, like in a lot of sports, but rugby in particular, is that it does very much have like a unifying spirit.
Right.
And I think it's so common that you travel somewhere. So, say we're based here in Los Angeles, but we're traveling to another city, another state. It's commonplace. You go there, you play the game, but afterwards there's not this animosity. It's like, okay, great, let's bond, let's go to dinner, lunch, whatever you want to do. Like, there's that unifying bond. And I think that's kind of a universal thing with rugby across the world. I think that just comes part and parcel with the game, which I think is beautiful because, yes, to your point, rugby is very nomadic. You do travel throughout the world to play, but it does really bring people together, and especially in a place where it's not, the tier 1 sport. I mean,
right,
in America, exactly. You've got all the big sports. Rugby, to its credit, has grown tremendously in the last 20 years, but it's still competing against, all the major sports. The football, the basketball, the baseball, you name it. So it does still stand out in an incredible way, but it just brings people together in ways that I haven't seen in other sports. So I think that's an incredibly special aspect to it.
No, I feel the same. One of the reasons why I even started doing all this stuff was that attachment to the community aspect of it. There's like you said, that uniquely trended rugby culture that goes along with it. That sometimes I don't even feel gets promoted as well within it. And you might be able to kind of touch on this because of the fact that you have the varying versions of rugby for Australia against the USA, and even to some extent within Canada. But I've always felt like there's that cultural element that never fully got promoted. We always talk about it like camaraderie and stuff like that, but it never gets fully promoted. And I wonder if sometimes it impacts its ability to push past that, fledgling sport mode here in the U.S. where, maybe in Australia or UK, you've been able to see some of those elements.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think having to compete with sort of the grassroots level sports here is very difficult, for rugby to kind of grow in the States the way that basketball and baseball and football do. Because, I mean, again, I didn't move here till I was 14, but, from what I can understand is the earliest sports that most people play are one of those 3 or maybe soccer.
Right.
But when you're in Australia, it's usually rugby or cricket. People still play soccer too, but like rugby is the biggest one. So you do have that kind of junior level where it's just kind of ingrained in you to kind of play at such an early age. And as you grow, it's just there's that unifying bond that we talked about earlier. I think even more so in countries like New Zealand and England and South Africa, it's becoming even more potent. I mean, again, I don't live in Australia anymore, but I still kind of keep tabs on the rugby world. And unfortunately, sort of rugby union is sort of having second fiddle to rugby league, to their Major League Soccer program. So I know there is a concern there about like what is the future of Australian rugby. I couldn't tell you. I feel bad kind of saying this, but I tend to follow more rugby league now myself, just because. I've
heard most Australians do. I have one of my friends. He's an Australian guy who lives in Malaysia, and he told me the same thing. He was like, I like rugby union, but rugby league, like it feels like there's a different, a more connective energy for Australians with rugby league than it has been with rugby union, I guess, the last 5 years. Yeah,
I don't know why it is. I know I kind of got out of the interest of rugby union several years ago, just because I found the rules were changing. It was becoming way too over officiated. It didn't have the same flow of games, so it didn't hold the same appeal to me. Whereas with rugby league, it's similarly structured to American football. You've got the 5 or so tackles, and you have to kick it. So it's got the constant back and forth. It's got a better energy to it, in my opinion.
Right.
So I think that's why I personally kind of gravitate towards it, and probably others do in the same regard.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I see it. I know for me personally, it's still like I feel like it's that ingrained. Enemy is the wrong word, but that little brother that you're just like, I can't let you have this, not yet. Mm-hmm. But you also know, you're also kind of dope. But I don't want you to know this.
Yeah, exactly. You can appreciate it, but I'm not going to tell you I like you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, kind of getting back within the acting component, I wanted to know. So, obviously, in the acting world, we've heard a lot of things in terms of like the difficulty when it comes to roles, the difficulty when it comes to connecting. For you, when you moved out to LA, having known the background that you had through your father, like, what was your experience kind of initially as you entered into that acting field in LA?
It was kind of just jumping into a field that I didn't really know too much about. It was kind of trial by fire, if you will.
Best way to learn.
Yeah. I went into it with a pretty positive attitude. Like every audition I went into, I was like, oh, I've definitely got that role. I'm definitely getting that. I didn't get any of them. But, no, I don't know. I just went into it with kind of an open mind, and at first, I remember my mate Danny. He would take me to his castings.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't be on the list, but I just write my name in anyway. They usually called me in, so it was just a great way to kind of get experience with the audition process, and kind of just being able to kind of finagle my way into the room,
right?
Which I think is important. I also worked at a British pub down in Santa Monica, the King's Head Tavern. And the great thing about that place is just so humble, and a lot of people from Britain and Europe who just kind of like career bartenders, waitresses, and so forth. So it didn't have the same kind of everyone's an actor, everyone's in the industry feel. It was just it was a great sort of escape from everything. So even to this day, I maintain close relationships with people there. That was very very important for me at the time. But yeah, I think once I started sort of taking programs and courses and acting lessons, that's when I really kind of got serious, because it's Los Angeles. Actors are more than a dime a dozen, and you're competing with professional actors from all over the world.
Right.
So it's not realistic to think that just show up and you're going to get work. It does take a lot of hard lessons learned. It takes a lot of yourself, hard work. I mean, it's a major investment.
Man, and look, I mean, clearly as it's investment as well as a certain level of luck that it seems, because even as you talk about how you received a role for Play Now with a guy you met in Starbucks and another guy that you met in a random place, like it doesn't always confluence together in the way that you would initially imagine, or what always seems to be portrayed in shows and whatnot. Go up, do your audition, and then they love you or they hate you, and maybe it's a little.
Well, like I said, this one was incredibly serendipitous. You know, again, you know, my mate told me about it, and I wasn't receptive at first, and then he put me in touch again, and you know, I just went to meet the producer and the writer in the lobby. Didn't prepare anything. It was more just like, hey, what's going on? Like, you're doing a movie about rugby. He asked me a bit about myself. I think he asked me more about actual rugby than acting ability. Asking me about things like, well, how far can you kick it? You know, what's your you know, your range for drop goals and so forth. Yeah. So that was cool. Just to talk shop with rugby, and then I went and met the director, his partner at Starbucks, and we just kind of chatted there, and then I know I had to give an audition. They wanted to kind of see, you know, my acting chops. Like, all right, and of course the role's Scottish. So I decided the best course of action would I'd drive over to my dad's place, and we'd film some of the audition sides. So I basically spent about 3 or 4 hours just watching all the Scottish material that I could watch. So I watched Braveheart, Train Spotting. I don't know. There's probably something else along there. I'm just basically trying to sort of replicate the accent. And then we ended up filming it, and I don't know how, but they Al and Dave, Al Deacon and Dave Story, they responded to it and called me back. So I if I watched the sides now, I'd be appalled. It was not my best performance, but it got me the job, and everything, the rest is history.
So, like, when they were talking to you about it, like, what actually kept sparking? Was it just like, hey, I want to get a job, or was there something actually in the script that kind of sparked you into being like, okay, this might be a role that I can take, enough to try and mimic the worst voice of Scottish in Mel Gibson?
Yeah. Well, I think, first and foremost, remembering that I was at the time a struggling actor, so any role that I could wrap my head around was like, of course, I'm definitely in. So that was big. But then the fact that it was about rugby, and I was just shortly, a short time before, had just finished my rugby career, so I still kind of like had that hankering to play.
Nice.
And then it was just also a great role, a great story. It was, just this young guy trying to find himself and kind of ostracizing a lot of people and getting out in his own 2 feet. It just seemed, I don't know, just cool. And, they just seem like really good blokes too, which they are.
Right.
And everything about it, everything that I learned about the script, the role, the people involved, where we were going to be filming. I mean, of course, the appeal of filming in Kansas City and Scotland.
Right.
I'm not going to say no to that, no matter what the story is. But
yeah, I know. What?
No way. Of course. But yeah, no, there was not one thing about it that made me, concerned or pause for concern. It was like, I'm in 100%. Let's go. Hard. And I'm incredibly thankful.
When you went to Scotland for that, whenever you initially went to Scotland and were doing that role, was that your first time going over to the UK in general, or? No,
because my dad's from Wales.
Okay.
So I'd spent a considerable amount of time kind of going back to Wales with him or to visit family, and then having gone to England multiple times with him, because that's where my grandmother's side's from. Right. Have since gone back to Ireland, which I love. So I mean, I've done pretty much all of it. I mean, it's an incredible place. But yeah, that was my first time in Scotland.
Nice. I have to say, I'd always, okay, so when it comes to Welsh, all right, I need to at least put this out here. So I always knew Wales, obviously, as being part of the UK. All right, This is going to sound offensive, but bear with me. I just learned this recently. I did not realize how culturally unique the Welsh culture was. It wasn't until this last Rugby World Cup that I even knew that Welsh was an actual language in and of itself. On top of it, because I'd always known it as like, again, this is going to sound bad from what I understand, but I always thought it was just like a better sounding English. Like I thought that was the Welsh language within that. So when I found out we were doing a little bit of filming, and this family for the Wales versus Australia game at the Rugby World Cup, and we were outside the stadium filming, and this family came with the rose and all the getup, and then sang us this song in Welsh. I was like, wait, this is a whole completely different language. Like, it's not like, different accents of English. This is its own. is that something that you tapped into, having the fact that you had gone back? Like, do you speak Welsh?
I don't really speak Welsh. I mean, there's the long train station, which I can say, which is, and I'm probably butchering this, so I apologize to any Welsh followers. But it's you'll have to excuse me because I can't give you the actual description of what I just said. But if you just look up longest train station in the world, that's what it is.
Nice.
But yeah, the Welsh culture is very rich in tradition and pride. I believe the Welsh language is, they're all kind of branches of kind of spin-offs of Gaelic and different versions of it. And I know there's a big push to basically start teaching Welsh again to the younger generations. Otherwise, it's going to become kind of a lost language. But I do believe there's success there. But yeah, it's just a very beautiful place, beautiful people. There's a real harmony. Right. It's almost poetic in the way they talk.
Yes, I was going to say it was very sing-songy. Not even the song. I'm talking just in terms of the flow of pattern of when they talk. Like you said, it was very sing-songy, which I appreciated. It was something that I could recognize a little bit when it comes to some of the Nigerian languages that I've interacted with, where it hit the pattern. It's sweet to the ears, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Welsh and Irish are kind of similar in that regard. Right. They're kind of poetic language. Scottish is a bit more has that the Scottish brogue, which kind of sets that apart. But yeah, it's a beautiful language. I wish I did know more. Outside of the train station, that's kind of the limitation to what I can say. But I love it. It's a wonderful, wonderful place and beautiful people.
No, I got it. I just had to put that out there because I was like, look, I finally got someone who's at least been and from Wales consistently. Let me reveal this new knowledge. No,
of course, I'm glad you did. It's building more awareness for the Welsh people.
So when you got into Scotland, like, what was that acting like? Because even the guy that you had that was playing your father, I've seen him in other places before, in other films. I couldn't put my finger on it. But, like, for you, like, what was it like, acting with that guy? Because he was intense. Like, he seemed intense.
Well, he'll love to hear that, and I'll let him know because that's actually my dad in real life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's Chard Hayward. So yeah, that's my dad in real life, and that was a great experience too. I mean, he's done a tremendous amount of work, but I think even he considers that one of his favorite experiences because we got to work together. And I like to think I kind of gave my 2 cents because at the time I got hired for the role, they hadn't cast that. Yeah. And I kept kind of mentioning, well, my dad, he could play. He could play the role, and Al and Dave kind of came on board with it. So next thing I knew, he was my dad, and he grew out his beard so he could have the big, the big chops. So that was great. I mean, it was great working with him. It's a very, very tense relationship between those two characters. So I think, in some respects, it made the relationship between my dad and I even that much more intense in a good way. Yeah. It kind of like fueled the emotion because there's like some intense scenes between us. Kind of when he gives me the bag at the end. I think the most daunting thing for me when we got to Scotland was actually speaking Scottish, my iteration of Scottish in front of Scottish people. And I remember it very distinctly. Is the day we flew in, we drove straight to Melrose. And there was an actual game there, and we were kind of just there for the experience. I don't even know if we filmed anything that day, but the whole kind of crew had come up from the US. Yeah, we were there, and there was I was by the grandstand, kind of going into the canteen or the locker room maybe, and there was 2 Scottish guys, and they said, "Oh, you're here for the movie?" They were obviously saying in their Scottish accent. I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Who do you play?" Because they'd heard about it. I was like, I play, the lead character. And they're like, well, you're supposed to be from Scotland, yeah? I said, yeah, that's right. They said, well, go on. Give me your best Scottish accent. I was so on the spot. But I gave them a bit of a line, and they kind of just looked at each other, looked at me, and they nodded, and they kind of gave their nod of approval. I said, not bad. not bad. So after that, I'm glad that happened the first day. I felt a big wave of relief because my accent had been accepted by the locals.
It's been passed. You are passable.
Yeah. Yeah. If they'd have said that's a joke, you're out of here, I would have had a bit of an issue during the remainder of the scenes.
I would have felt it'd been a little awkward. I'd been like, look, guys, just don't take the insult too heavily.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
we'll dub it. We'll dub it. Don't worry.
Right? No, like I always find it interesting, especially whenever it's doing those accents. And for you, obviously, the method you used was interesting. Did you end up having a moment where you were just like practicing with your dad, going back and forth, with trying to see whose Scottish accent could be the most Scottish between the two of y'all?
Not really. I mean, like we had a very different preparation. I mean, because for the most part, while he was preparing, I was in Kansas City, filming, and then I remember there was a short break where I came back for a couple of days, and then we were on separate flights, and we met in New Jersey, because from New Jersey that was a connecting flight to Scotland. So that was, I don't think we really kind of had any sort of scene preparation or interactions regarding our Scottish accents or the scenes in general until we got to Scotland. We prepared very, very separately. But yeah, it was just one of those things we kind of just fell into. And again, being that it was actually my dad, not to sound cliche, but like it just wasn't acting. It was just kind of
just interacting.
Once you get the lines down, we're just kind of just going back and forth with each other, which was lovely. I mean, it was one of the points in the film where I felt so invested in the role, where it wasn't me kind of like, right, how do we want to do this scene, so forth. It was just like, let's just be. One of my and throughout my entire acting career, that was some of the most real feelings I've felt, while being on camera.
And I can feel that. I was gonna say, like, was there ever, whenever you started acting, a concept of a possibility that you felt you could have a chance to act with your dad in a role? Was it something that you maybe had aimed for? Maybe not, maybe primarily aiming for, but in the back of your mind, kind of, hey, this would be kind of cool to do. Prior to this.
Yeah. Well, at that point, no, because it was one of my first roles. So at that point, I would usually go to him when I had an audition, and we would do that together, which was cool. It was great to have someone doing the scene with me who I trust, implicitly. Right. But it was, at that point, it wasn't, all right, this is what we should work towards. It just kind of just happened organically, which was great. And we have had the opportunity to do a couple more things together. Nice. We did a few plays, a few scenes on stage, which was nice. So yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed being able to work with him a couple of times.
Man, and I can imagine, like you said, it seems to have been able to continue to bring you guys closer, because it's almost like, again, traveling with somebody. Like if you're sharing a scene, like the emotions that are already supposed to be set for any scene can already be intense, depending obviously on the role. But to have that father-son one, and then to be able to have something similar like that in other instances, I have to imagine that the relationship between you guys are incredibly strong.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the fact that it's my dad in real life, I'm sure amplified the scene even more. I mean, I can't say what it would be like if it was just another actor, playing my dad. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's my dad and I are incredibly close. I'm close to both my parents, and again, the fact that I was able to do it with him, and experience that real emotion, just was incredible, and I'm very thankful for it.
Man, that's dope. So when you guys got to Kansas City, because this is the one that's interesting because of the fact, one, you guys were in Arrowhead Stadium for, and then I always wondered whenever I first saw it, because I think at that time, there had been a movie that was done here in Louisiana that had, I can't remember his name now, but he was one of the actors from Twilight, but he had played a rugby role out here, and they had essentially tried to bring us as a club to come play as extras and part of that, right? When it got to the Kansas City stuff, and I was watching it, I was like, did you guys tap into the clubs in those areas to be able to fill as a competition, or how'd that work
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely did. Dave Story, the director, he's from Kansas City. I should say Kansas, because I know we stayed with his family in Kansas, but we filmed the majority in Kansas City. But yeah, I know we played against the Kansas City Blues.
Nice.
Which, as far as I know, is one of the major programs in the Midwest, and obviously Kansas City. So I know there's a major scene there where they're kind of like the big team that, the ragtag group of our team goes and plays. The Wanderers, that's it. So we went and played them, but it was great. I mean, I remember it vividly because we were at their home field, and we were just kind of like a group of actors. I don't really recall if that many of the guys on the Wanderers had a history of rugby, I think there was a few that had kind of played sparingly, but majority of them had played football or some other sport. So everyone was kind of still picking up as we went along. But then all the guys who played for the Blues showed up, and it kind of felt like they came into it with the mindset of like, all right, it's game day. And I'm like, all right, guys, just calm it down. Just remember we're filming here, so it's
not serious. Easy.
Ease up on the tackles. It doesn't need to be full go. But look, I think in retrospect that was fantastic and actually helped a lot because a lot of the intensity is real. Like some of the backline plays, some of the scrum sets, the lineouts, like a lot of that, like we filmed it in a very real capacity. I mean, there's one kickoff scene where I don't know if we kind of mapped it out, in terms of what would happen. It was more just like, all right, kick off. And I know Harry Frith, the DP, was incredible. He was at the back by the try line.
Mm-hmm.
And then it felt like they didn't call cut for about 2 minutes. So we're basically just playing rugby for about 2 minutes, and everyone seemed to enjoy it. I had a great time. It felt like being back on the field.
Nice.
So I think that's why a lot of the scenes do look very real, is because they did let us kind of play for a little while. I mean, some of those hits, were actual hits, and you felt them afterwards.
I mean, I was gonna say because I know what you call it. I think the guy who played Henry, the bald guy, whenever he was whenever he was going in for those goals, especially in like that last scene where he's just running down the field. I know obviously it was a lot of cut scenes, but part of my mind was like, how many times did he get accidentally hit to make sure that dive at the end was going to be like legitimate to win the game overall? Like it was those kind of like the feeling of it, the intensity of it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, they definitely let us play in certain respects, or even if they'd set up a scene. I remember one time, when we were in Scotland, they wanted to get like a very kind of real feeling of tackling someone into the sideline. So we literally just filmed like 10 to 20 takes of tackling someone into the sideline, and they were real hits. Not to the point where it's like American football where you're smashing into each other. Like we're basically taking out the person's legs, but those are real. The person's running at least like 3/4 full speed.
So no skill levels for you guys.
No, I remember one in particular. There were it was when we were in Scotland and we're playing the local team. I want to say it was like the Watsonians or something like that. But it was in Edinburgh, and this was in the story. I'm going back to play my former team,
right?
And so I'd spotted them, and so they were like there's a lot of angst against me. They wanted like payback, and so the scene was I had to run along the sideline, and they set up like a gymnastics mat next to the sideline,
right? But
there was just a line of players, and each one would just take the turn, just kind of absolutely annihilating me with a tackle into the mat, and they didn't hold back. Like these tackles, like I'm talking about, like picking up and like hammering down. And thank God for that mat. Otherwise, I would have been in a lot worse shape. I remember there was one where I thought I'd broken my nose, which would have been disastrous because there's only so much makeup that you can do to kind of cover that up. But thankfully, it wasn't anything bad. But yeah, a lot of that was real. It killed. It really killed. But hey, it looks great on camera, so that's all that matters.
I mean, look, do it for the performance. Do it for the performance. I love it.
Yeah, I'm a committed actor. That's what it comes down to.
So I always say, like, there was two movies that really set the pacing in that time in 2010. It was Forever Strong that was, I guess, made in 2005. That seemed to be for American cinema specifically. There was Forever Strong that I think I feel like every first-time rugby player gets told, check this movie out. And then there was Play On that became the first one that I felt was an independent movie that was made in the U.S. Obviously not a big studio movie, but it looked like there was dedication, passion, and love that went into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever it comes to those situations like that, I don't know, I've looked at some of the movies that you've played in, but for you, do you feel that you felt that you have played in? Do you feel like there is a certain higher level of commitment that goes into these passion projects a little bit more because of the fact that there seems to be a much more emotional desire to make it rather than maybe a pure financial one? So it makes it a little bit more.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there was a huge investment of time that was required of certain individuals, and again, for me, it was fairly straightforward. I mean, my job at the time was bartending, and the people there are so wonderful. They said, yeah, by all means, go and do what you have to do. But I mean, like some of the guys on the team, I mean, they have families, they have careers, where it's essentially a 9 to 5. So you're basically asking these individuals to take vacation time, be away from their families.
Right.
And that was a lot of pressure. And, the fact that this was a passion project from Al and Dave, who basically, I know Al kind of wrote the whole thing with Dave, and they produced it, and directed it. And I know Ivan, who plays the Argentinian character, he would fly in frequently from Florida because that's where he lived, and that's where his family's based, and he had a job down there, has a job. So yeah, it was a big sacrifice for a lot of people, and there were some times filming where it was basically let's just figure out how to do it. Let's get it done. Maybe the first idea that we had in mind won't work, but we just kind of figure out a solution. And that's where the genius of Harry Frith came into play. He was always just able to come up with the most incredible solves to issues. I mean, one of the most talented filmmakers I've ever worked with. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think it takes a lot more investment, personal. Right. I'm not talking financially here, but just like a personal sacrifice to get these kind of projects done, because you don't have that backing of a studio or the big financials. It's up to you to make it all work.
How long did it take you guys to finish that film?
I want to say we were in Kansas City, and we actually filmed it, I believe, in 2006 and 2007.
Oh wow! So this has been a long time being made.
Yeah. So I believe we were in Kansas City for, don't quote me on this, but it was somewhere between 5 to 7 weeks. So let's go with 6. And then, we all came back to, the people who were based in Los Angeles came back. I think it was maybe less than a week. And then we all got on a plane to Scotland. And I want to say that was maybe a week to 10 days of filming there.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'm around that 2-month mark, probably a little bit under it.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad though. That's good. It's impressive still within that much time to be able to cram in a lot, because obviously you are trying to make the most of every minute of every hour and trying to make it work.
Well, and just the avenues they were able to kind of open up to film. I mean, getting into Murrayfield in Edinburgh. I mean, that's kind of that's holy land,
right,
regarding Scottish rugby. So to be able to get access to film in there and get on the pitch, and to have Gavin Hastings involved, who's essentially the god of rugby in Scotland.
Yep. I
mean, those aren't small things, and I think that's what really kind of sets this film apart is to have that accessibility and makes it a lot more real.
I referenced to this last Rugby World Cup simply because it was so recent, but one thing I felt even in Japan, there's something about being on that on, even if it's not necessarily historic, but the field where that there is massive action, massive and very I guess the word is consequential action that will happen on the field. It's almost like an energy that comes off from it. When you're inside, say, Arrowhead Stadium, and you're inside at Marydale, like, did you feel like, man, I have a responsibility to make sure I portray this well, because this honor of being able to be in this arena in this way?
Look, I think, speaking purely for Murrayfield, for this example, like it just brought out naturally. Just being, such a rugby head growing up, and knowing the history of all the test matches that took place on that pitch, that stadium, it just already gives you a sense of like, this is incredible. So, it didn't really take much acting. It was just like, I'm just going to go out there and be, because I'm honored to be on this grass. And you walk out in the grass, and it's got a different feel. I mean, I'm sure that the groundskeepers, I think that's a full-time job, kind of taking care of that, because it's the softest grass. It's got that air of energy just being in that stadium. It was really something. And just because I was there with some of the local rugby players that were part of the project too, and we were kind of just throwing the ball around, kicking it, and just, I don't know, it's most people don't get that opportunity to do that. So I definitely didn't take it for granted. I was thankful to be able to do that.
Dude, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. So after you got done with Play On, what were you able to take out from that, moving on to the next step for you?
I don't think I've worked on a project since that had the same sense of camaraderie with everyone. I mean, I've been very lucky to be involved in some incredible projects, and also, you build relationships respective to those. But that group of people, what we're able to kind of pull off in that time frame, and as I was referencing before, kind of like, the unexpected things that come up, and then you kind of just get forced to figure out a solution. It was just such a bonding experience. And that was the most special project I've ever worked on.
Really?
Without a doubt. It was just, it just had an air of magic about it. And, we chat every now and then, like, myself and various individuals on the film, and we kind of just rehash some of the memories. But I just remember it being kind of, one of my most favorite projects I've ever worked on my entire career.
Dude, that's so dope. That's so dope. I would probably say this is probably the one that would stand out the most, just because of how, not even unique as it was just from experiencing it, but I think even in terms of the historical factors of it being in this very young, what I would like to call young rugby cinematic string of events, because it's not very many. I've looked it up. It's not very many rugby movies.
No, there's not. And I'm honored to be part of one of the very few rugby films that are out there. Everything about it. I mean, from just being told about the film in the first place, to meeting Al and Dave and discussing the script, all the way filming and to it being launched and debuted. It was everything about it has a sense of like I said, that magic, that specialness to it. And I mean, it is one of the few. I haven't really seen too many other rugby films that have come out. In fact, I can't even name one outside of the other one you mentioned. So I probably need to get out there and do a bit of digging. But yeah,
it really is digging. Like it's funny when it comes to it, because I do particularly like my films. I mean, outside of, I think probably the only other one that people would really know is Invictus. And then
of course,
for obvious reasons, right?
Yeah.
But then whenever you start getting down into the nitty gritty of it, like it's either very independent films that are not well known, but you see them here and there. I think there's like movies like Mercenary, which is French. I think one that's probably one of the greatest ever done, but it's the silliest of all time, is Psy. And so you have I would recommend checking it out. You're gonna need subtitles, but you're just gonna laugh, because
check it out.
It's Indian. It's Bollywood. It's a Bollywood rugby movie. So
ticks all the boxes. I'm down. I'd love to watch it.
So it's nice to be able to see like that cultural resonance across. Again, it's let alone already small enough to be able to have rugby movies, let alone American ones. And I think yours would count as one of 3. I mean, you leave Invictus out of it because that's a different range.
Yeah.
But one of 3 between the Nomads, Play On, and Forever Strong. So yeah,
I'm honored to be a part of that list. That's cool.
So kind of wrapping up, what is it now? Like, what have you been able to do rugby stuff or been able to obviously continue on with career as it was, moved on to bigger and better things? Like for you, what's been the next move since?
I mean, like I said, I've been lucky to work on several projects in the years that have happened, evolved. Kind of working more on the business side of the production world now. So I think a lot of people kind of gravitate towards that in a journey. In terms of rugby, I follow my rugby league team back in Sydney, the Sydney Roosters, which are two-time premiership winners. So going for a third, no big deal.
No biggie. Humble, of course.
No biggie, they'll be fine. And then, ironically, I was at Dick's Sporting Goods the other day because I wanted to get a pump for my football, and they had like one of the big bins like with like the whole range of like basketballs, volleyballs, softballs, whatever, and just right on top was this brand new Gilbert, and it was pumped up perfectly, and without even thinking, I just grabbed it like that's mine, and I pretty much had it every time I walk in the house. I just grab it and I'm kind of walking around with it, kind of reliving the glory days. So I've been going down to the park with my neighbor Nick and kind of just kicking it and throwing it around. So it's been nice to kind of get back into it.
Look, slowly inoculate you back into the rugby world. Like get on the pitch, man. I mean,
No. I'll probably be snapped like a twig if I ever went back out there. So I'm happy to be a spectator.
Have you had a chance to actually catch up with MLR or any of that's been going on here in the U.S.?
The local league or the American leagues?
Professional league, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I keep tabs to a certain degree. I do I pay more attention to my college team or the club team.
San Diego State?
Yeah, because the Aztecs have quite a strong rugby team, and I think their program has grown substantially over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
So I I keep tabs on them. Obviously, when you get big headlines of I don't think it's the MLR, but it's the team that's in Toronto. It might be rugby league. I know Sonny Bill Williams went over there.
It's a dog
like a super
name.
league. It's like a super league, I think, because I know. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I keep tabs. I enjoy reading the headlines. I know, was it Ma Nonu who went down to San Diego?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was surprised they got some pretty big names, which was fantastic for the league. But I haven't really watched too much of it.
I mean, look, man. You're already here. You know.
I know. I mean, without a doubt, I have no excuse. I do need to get back into
LA has
it.
a team too, the Guiltinis, but whatever. It's still their name.
I'll go check it out.
Man, Adam, like legitimately, I truly appreciate this. This was really
of course.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Thank you. I'm very grateful that you had me on the show. So thank you.
Man, I thank you so much. Yo, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being able to talk with Adam on this. Literally great guy. Definitely appreciate him for taking the time to get on the podcast and just talk a little bit and just give some background. I mean, I hope it gives you a chance to hopefully go find it. Like I said at the beginning, I do believe that this is on Apple iTunes, on Apple Movies, or on Amazon, if I remember correctly. And check it out. It's definitely an independent film, but it's incredibly endearing and it's incredibly heartwarming, and nice to add to the few American rugby movies that are out there. We know Forever Strong, the Nomads, who I had James Brunson on, who leads the North Philly Nomads. They did the movie about him and his group. You can find that episode. And, of course, then there's Play On to be able to watch that just speaks about the American rugby experience for now. So you guys check it out, and appreciate you guys for definitely listening. Always. Definitely check out the other episodes that we have. Last week, we did a bit of a throwback, but an informational one with Jackie Finlan of the Rugby Breakdown. Before that, we had Farrah Douglas of Mount St. Mary's Rugby, a great, insightful interview. We had Rashad Litford, the founder of North Carolina A&T. The aforementioned James Brunson of the North Philly Nomads. Matthew Provost of Prairie View A&M. Nicholas Walcott. Definitely check this one out on the Chicago Griffins Rugby Club. We also had Chetta Emba, fullback for USA Rugby's 15s and 7s women's team. We had Ram Eddings of Idaho State and the founder of the Grey Wolves. We've had Charity Williams, Olympic medalist for Canada's Rugby Sevens women. Saifedean Safir of Morehouse College, and more Blaine Scully of USA Rugby. We've gotten so many great guests, so many great listens. I'm telling you, you want to hear this from beginning to end. It's well worth it. And once again, I appreciate you guys for taking the time to listen, coming back each week, taking up the time to participate and be able to just let me, listen to me rant. So, thank you very much, and I want to just let you know, I hope that you guys have a great week. I hope that you guys stay happy. I hope that you guys stay healthy, and let you know that you are absolutely highly favored. I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.